Bob Lazar is one of the most controversial figures in the community of UFOs and UAPs and flying saucers. He came out publicly in 1989 through KLAS TV in Las Vegas, claiming that he had been hired by the United States government to reverse engineer alien spacecraft in a remote location in the Nevada desert called Area 51. That story became a worldwide sensation back then and still is today. Lazar is without a doubt the original whistleblower. He's the first person who came out telling the world that the United States government had intact spacecrafts from another civilization. I spent a lot of time with Bob Lazar in the last 3 years. This is a man who is without a doubt a scientist. Bob Lazar is also somebody that works with very dangerous materials every single day, whether that be with radioactive uranium all the way to high-powered explosives. In fact, back in the 1990s, Bob was in charge of a big event in Nevada called Desert Blast. That went on for many, many years. This initially started off being just a group of friends that went out to a dry lake in the middle of the desert to blow up beautiful fireworks and bombs, and eventually became one of the largest events out in the desert at that time. And there were literally thousands of people that would show up. Regardless of the amount of people that would be there, you needed a very special invitation to show up at Desert Blast. That was a big part of his life, and that also is something that we discussed a lot while we were together. That also showed me a completely different side of Bob Lazar, which is something that we don't always hear about when we hear his name. He's an incredibly jovial type of person. He has an incredible sense of humor. He's a very warm-hearted person, very caring person. I spent a lot of time with him and his wife at their home. They have horses, dogs, cats, and this incredible bird sanctuary. And he's very affectionate with the animals. He's a wonderful husband. And he's also somebody who I consider to be a great friend. He's been under a lot of attacks over the years, and a lot of people have said a lot of things about Bob Lazar. Having spent a lot of time with him, his friends, and his family, it was clear to me that Bob Lazar is somebody who is extremely honest and somebody who really has great values. I do understand some of the frustration out there because parts of the story cannot be verified. That's completely understandable. In fact, when I spoke to Bob about that many times, he always said, I never thought people would believe my story. He said, in fact, I wouldn't believe my own story. He said, there's no evidence really to substantiate some of the claims that I've said. He always says it. Healthy skepticism is really important. We need to get to the bottom of this. And he's also very much supportive of people who don't believe the story because he says we need them to try to gain more traction into finding out what's really going on behind the scenes. He says it doesn't take away the fact that I did work out there. I remember having a really close conversation with Bob while we were driving, and he said, it doesn't really matter what people think, and it doesn't really matter what is written out there about me. This is something that happened to me, whether they like it or not. And if they don't want to believe it, that's fine. That kind of translated a lot over time when I was with Bob. It's something that struck a chord with me because I never really saw something that was non-genuine with him. I always felt there was a lot of genuine feelings and emotions there.
I mean, what happened? Where did they take it? Did they, really get a grasp on some of the technology? It's, decades later. Did they make any more developments? Did they, figure out what everything did? I mean, we were pretty much in the dark at that time, but I'm really dying to know how far the project went.
So it's important to remember that Bob Lazar is not just a flying saucers guy that worked at S4 back in the late 1980s. There's a lot more to the man and a lot more to the story. I spent 3 years with him, and I decided to shed a whole new light on who the real Bob Lazar is in the new film S4, The Bob Lazar Story. And I cannot wait to show it to everybody.